Welcome once again. It's Judy Julin, and today I have the distinct pleasure of sitting down with Sebastian Steinbach, and he is a great new friend, one that I met through Children's Health Defense California teen group that I'm also proud to be a part of. So today we'll be talking about his work with youth, with teens and screens. We're at a crazy time in our world right now, and yet these crazy times give way for innovation, quantum leaps in new ways of being, especially with children, and in nature, deep relationships, deep inquiry. Everything that you're talking about that you do with Wild Hearts Kids Club is I think the basis for a wonderful education system. Ultimately, this is stepping into the future, and it's something that I've thought about, and I'm going to leave this portion of our conversation with this, and I'd like your thoughts about it. Eventually, I mean, right now, kids can pretty much get a lot of what they need to know pretty quickly access with regards to the internet and or asking questions. Information is available. And it comes down to what are they interested in, what are their passions, what do they want to do in the world, how do they want to contribute.
Yeah.
Let's jump on a quantum leap into the future, and let's say that all information is available, and let's also say that we become more aware of our I'm not going to even say supernatural, but extrasensory perceptions, so that we can gain wisdom in interesting ways that maybe aren't by books or aren't by movies, that we can gain wisdom in ways where we just actually know it. That's kind of, people say, I've downloaded that information. Let's say that's a way for people to learn. So what if all information was available? Children were able to do what they loved, the girl with the ribbons that you know, and she danced and matched with their passions. What then becomes the school? Where does the education happen? The education, to me, I'd like to break down the walls of the school and break down the walls of the family. I mean, education is all ages, all abilities, all learning, all together, all the time. Communities, businesses, it's all education, and it's all to draw forth that which is already within children. So let's say all of us have access to all the information we need anytime. What then becomes learning, and what then becomes the school, whether it's at home, in your Wild Heart Kids Club, or in a school of sorts? I leave you with that question. Yeah, I know it's another big one. I'm sorry.
No, let's play with it. And you mentioned a few key words like relationships and community, and even the word leap. And so I really want to mention again the foundation, really foundational work for everything I do, that I've been able to participate at Leap Forward with Ronit Hertzfeld, where everything that you just said is in the DNA of what we practice, let's say, to the best of our abilities. Everything happens through the relationships. Like, that's where everything begins. Trust is only built over time, and you can only build it if you have certain set of values you commit to, and then learn to hold yourself and others accountable to it, so that you can rely on this person will care, this person will be in integrity with their word, for example. So without that trust, relationships cannot evolve and allow for that self-expression that you just called forth in your vision of how what if vision, which I actually believe is actually true. All the information is always here, and these moments of knowing, they do happen sometimes when, and this is how I think about it, when I'm open, when I'm calm here, and I'm open in my heart, and I'm present in my body, and my senses are like here, my 1,000 ears are open to listen. Yeah, suddenly information just shows up in my awareness, and I'm like, wow. And I could have not thought of it. It's not from my own mind. It comes from, definitely from something bigger, and I call it God, and other people call it spirit or the universe, but it's, I think, pointing to the same thing. So I do believe that is true. And the question really then becomes, like, how can we help so that we stand less in our own way, and help don't stand in the kids' way, and help the kids don't stand in their own way. And I do believe it comes back to what you said in the beginning, in the outset. What are we grown-ups modeling? How open are we? Or how how much do we live in our own stories and just our talking heads? And kids learn from what they see, they model what they experience. And so if we want to help the kids, then we want to really work on our own refinement and like quiet down the chatter and listen through the senses that we are given, which are a perfect tool to pick up the vibrations that you pointed to before as well. That is a universal tool really to navigate life. We're guided by that benevolent force. And we have to learn to listen to that and follow it. And so everything is school, everything is learning. We are learning machines. So our organism is designed to learn from the first breath we take to the last breath that we take in this life. I really believe that. And then there's parts of us, typically we call that the ego and the defense mechanisms against things we don't like, that keep us from actually evolving as fast as we could. And that's kind of the dance that I think I find myself in as well in my life, of how much can I actually overcome that system that wants to protect me, but it's actually keeping me from really opening up to the beauty and the wisdom of life.
I heard you mention earlier you set your intentions. So I think intention-based living and a God-centric living is hugely important. That's kind of has been missing in the schools of late. And now we have a perfect opportunity that, intertwined and intermixed with nature, is, I think, a recipe for an incredible new paradigm, if you would, education. So this beautiful picture that we've talked about for the last few minutes, let's now jump over to a topic, teens and screens. It's in our lives, it's here, it's in my life. I'm sure it's in your life too. Let's talk a little bit about that topic, because I know it's one that you do important work in.
Yeah, let me really make sure I keep this succinct and then open up more if you want to hear more, but this is something one can talk about for hours. And I think the most succinct way of stating the problem that we have as a society with the ubiquitous, that's the right word, right? The everywhere.
Ubiquitous?
Ubiquitous, thank you.
I kind of liked your way of pronunciation better, but the English
ubiquitous.
way is
That's
ubiquitous.
No, we want people understand me, so ubiquitous. Ubiquitous. Thank you. Younger and younger kids get access to tablets, even smartphones. Schools only operate on computers anymore at the moment, as I see it in my own kids. And so why that is a problem is that the screens are designed, they work visually, and they bring us into that part of our brain that operates through the sense of vision. And it usually brings us in our heads. So I see it in myself when I spend much time on the computer. I see it in my kids when they do want to play the video games, which I sometimes allow them. They don't come out of it more relaxed, open, and present. They come out tense, and they come out hyper excited, and they come out almost confused back in the real world. And so the problem is that technology disconnects us from who we fully are. Not all tech is bad, not going down that route, but right now tech is dominated by big tech, which has profit intentions, profit purposes, and does their best with their brilliant people and tools to get people addicted and exploit their attention. That's what those systems are designed to do. And so our children are even more helpless than we are against this onslaught of highly brilliant, artificially intelligence powered algorithms that get your attention and keep it and bring you deeper into their world and trigger the dopamine just at the right level that you want to keep on coming back. And over time you feel worse about yourself. You will learn fake values, toxic values. You become lonely because you spend more time on your phone than with your friends or family. Like I read this study, between 7 and 9 hours a day the average teenager spends on their device. And I've spoken to schools here, and they confirm that kids that have phones are usually unable to focus in class. They can't. They always have these phones in front of them. So it's a drug, a very powerful, very potent drug. It's like giving our kids heroin or beer for their 12th birthday and say, yeah, well, everybody does it, so you should do it too. Well, no, of course we don't do that, but with phones we do it. I believe we don't understand the risk yet as a society. It's fairly recent that these tools came to be. And if we don't intervene, a generation's brains are going to be fried in a way that creates irreparable damage, probably, that will prune. I mean, teenagers are in a time of their lives where their brains get pruned into what they will be being and where their place in life is. And so they are learning to be dependent consumers of addictive, scatterbrained engagement that is fake and virtual in a 2D screen. That's the generation that big tech is raising if we don't do something about that. And so I joined a movement called Heed the Children. That is one of the movements that wants to mitigate that damage and is particularly seeks to bring together all these good players that do something about it, like the researchers, the educators highlighting the dangers of screens, to parents, all the way to people who invent and create engaging activities that help the kids choose real life over their screens. And well, I fall into that latter category where I do my best to invent activities that are unheard of, outrageous, and fun that kids want to participate in versus their screens. So, and just to end here for a moment, the goal there is to really convince as many parents as possible to not give their kids a smartphone until the age of 16, because the smartphone in particular, with social media on it in particular, that combination is the deadliest of all, by far, especially for young girls. And I have 2 of them in my house, so they won't get a phone anytime soon.
Would you say that your understanding of what you've just spoke of was in large part your reason for your forming of the Wild Heart Kids Club and those activities, or did they happen simultaneously?
Actually, yes and no. So yes, because I did see what happened to my kids when they had to do their school on Zoom in the lockdown. It was, excuse my French, well, I won't say it. I say it, a shit show.
You can say it.
It was a shit show. Nobody paid attention. They became zombies in front of their screens and were so depressed and unhappy. I almost took them out of school. Then they reopened it. So, okay. So that really drove home the point that there's too much screens going on, and schools rely on screens. And even when they went back to school, there was lots of screens still happening. So that was a trigger to say, hey, I have to do something to get them away from screens, together with each other, out into nature. That has to happen because schools do the opposite, and it's not healthy for them. So yes, in that sense, but then no, in that really only in the last half year did I begin to understand how dangerous the phones themselves are, particularly because my son turned 14, entered high school. He wanted one of those things, smartphones that is, and didn't get it. But also through the work with Heed the Children, I understood, wow, this is dangerous stuff. And that's why I won't give him a phone. And so I'm in the process of really diving deeper into the research and understanding the depth of the problem even better. Because I believe the more I let that in, the more I can feel that pain and shock of what it actually does to our brains and our children's brains. And then my system will respond with hopefully creative ways that bring more kids into real life and away from their screen. So I'm also still evolving in my understanding of it.
Yeah, I love that. I hear your commitment, though. Would you be able to give our listeners who are parents or educators any thoughts about how you can enlighten children as to what's really going on with technology? Or are there ways that you do it, languaging, that you talk with your children?
This is a very good question, and that's really the edge I'm working on myself. So I have begun, because they want their screen time, and I'm experimenting, to be very honest. So what I have learned so far is I can sow some seeds, and I can sow some nuggets and say, hey, my son Benny, hey, did you know that so and so many % of teens say they're depressed and that it comes from using social media? Do you know anyone like that, and what do you think? And then not to try to convince him, but to really get him to talk to me, so that he can share with me what is his perspective on social media and on phones. And so that was successful to an extent that he actually shared how he sees the situation. That allowed me to learn something new about his perspective, because if I only come from top down, it'll result in a block. He's a teenager after all, so that will not work. So that is one, open up dialogue, but gently and not with the hammer. That's one thing. And the other thing I'm trying, it works best with the youngest one, is when she does get her screen time, which I have been cutting, but she gets it, and she comes out and she's a mess, which often is the case. I'll actually say, hey, Lena, so how do you feel? Do you notice what you're feeling? And how does that connect with your video game time? What do you think? She might get upset about that. So there's no gotcha here. That's not going to work. And I had those moments where I kind of gotcha'd her, and that backfired, and that was not a good thing. But there is now ways that she pauses herself and says, I actually don't want to play so much. It's not so good for me. I'd rather do something else. And so there's something there to be connected to them and help them become aware of what they're actually feeling when they're playing a game with me or their friends, or when they're in a video game, and what the difference there is. And so that seems to begin to help them build an awareness. So that's two. And then the third thing that I actually had the best success with so far is a screen Shabbat, where they just don't get any. And that's the Sunday. From Saturday night to Sunday night, nobody has any screen, including myself. And then they will be like, like the junkie, like, what do I do? What do I do? I'm so bored. Like, sure, we're gonna be fine. And every single time after a short while, between 10 and 20 minutes, they have their first idea what they want to do.
One of the things that someone that I work with our Wild Learning Lab, he's our program director, and he works a lot with teens. And one of the things that he tried for a while was to actually sit down with your child or someone in a class that has a screen and is playing a game, and ask if you could learn about it. Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, Sebastian, and perhaps continue the conversation with you?
Yeah, I would be very happy to connect with curious, caring parents, just like I am, to develop good stuff together. And like, easy ways are an email or a phone text. Don't call me, because my phone will send you to my robot mailbox. So text or emails are best.
So I can give out your phone number for text. I can give out your email.
Yes.
I'll put the and any websites that I can send them to at this point.
I'll give you my website as well, and you can send it out too.
Great.
And there is
great
stuff all the time to see.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to working with you with Children's Health Defense California Chapter Teen Group, and
Yes.
I look forward to continuing our conversation, because I really think that your heart-centered, compassionate view of parenting and education is something that is going to be more and more at the forefront as we move ahead in these days. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.